Monday, May 23rd. Hello everyone and welcome to our garden here in the backyard. We're going to be doing a garden tour of what's growing. My name is Brian. We're growing in the Los Angeles area here in Southern California. Our climate is very mild, so we're able to grow lots of things in a small space, and you'll see all the things that we've packed in. For our regular channel viewers, let me give you a quick update on how our space has changed. In the past, our growing area predominantly stopped where the planters are, and we called it the 150 square foot garden. We've since expanded to this space here, and we're using containers to plant in them. The other thing that we've added is the vertical planter along the wall there, and that's made with cedar fence boards, dog ear pickets. And then a project that I got around to finally is having an outdoor sink, and this sink is courtesy of my old neighbor. He gave it to me prior to moving away. And then we have a faucet here. This is one that my brother gave me. We got some nice spraying action from this. It really helps clean our vegetables. And the other thing is that I also got around to using more of the lumber that was our old patio. So most of this wood here is reclaimed lumber, with the exception of the side panels that are also made with dog ear pickets. These posts came from my brother. He was done using them for a project. This is hardware from our old patio that we're using to make our bench more secure. We have some hardware down here as well. And then our chickens, since they spend the time in the backyard, this is where they lay their eggs, and this is where they're comfortable. And the bench here I'm using as a workspace, and we have some citrus trees that we moved here. So let's see what's out here. First of all, we have onions. So we got some good sized Maui onions, and onions is a crop that I want to be able to grow and supply for ourselves, because sometimes when we buy onions, we buy some, and then a week later when we go to get them from the fridge, they're mushy. So that's one that we want to grow. And with our mild climate, I just grow them haphazardly. I sow them whenever I have some time, and sometimes we don't get large onions. Sometimes we get onions that are about this size, which is not bad, because when you put them together, they end up being a good amount. And then sometimes we only need half of an onion, half the large onions that you get from the market. So getting some small ones is nice. And we'll see some onions growing in the garden, I'm sure, because I'm always sowing them. And getting the discipline to sowing them at a proper time is something that I want to work on. So I want to dedicate a bed and have a nice harvest of onions. Other things that we grow, garlic. Garlic is something that I want to grow enough of to supply for myself, and we have a few varieties. This is Spanish Roja, Thai Fire. We didn't get a good harvest this year. This is a proven variety that can grow in Southern California. All three of these are Spanish Roja, Thai Fire, and Chestnut Red. We grow them throughout our property, and some microclimates grow better than others. There's a microclimate in the front yard that grows really nice chestnut garlic for us, and here is a couple nice examples. These we will save, and they're going to be seed garlic for our next planting. And seed garlic is something that has become really expensive because of the demand for growing your own garlic. And if you're trying to grow your garlic, I recommend that you start with the soft necks that you get from the supermarket. Work with those first, because they tend to be less expensive than these types of garlic, which go for upwards to $20 a pound these days, is my guess. They're around 16 to and above. The other thing that we've been harvesting are these Genovese, Costoluto Genovese tomatoes. These are the fluted tomatoes, so we'll see the plants. We're taking them off the vine and letting them ripen inside, and this is their first harvest, and some of them are looking to be ready. We also have an early girl tomato that we harvested as well. So let's go inside and see what we have growing. First, you'll notice we have a green stock, and these are good planters. I would consider this more of an appliance They're relatively more expensive, but this is a family-owned company, and it's produced in the United States, so the prices are reflective of that. And they're a really good company as well. We have some Himo Togarashi. These are the long peppers. They're great for drying and making pepper powder. And then we have potatoes. Potatoes is something that we've been able to grow our own supply of. So we succession plant them. We get a nice harvest for the meal that we were making, and so we have different stages of potatoes growing. Here in this bed, we have some peppers. So in the Burpee unboxing, we got peppers, and peppers are something that's always fun to grow, and some of them are actually very pragmatic because we actually eat them. Others we grow for fun, but most of the peppers we grow for eating. This is ahi rocoto. It's also known as a Manzano pepper, and I finally got some viable seeds from a friend, and I'm super happy to see 2 plants growing, and these are used in Peruvian cuisine. The plants, the pepper plants here, they were sown pretty early, and I didn't get around to transplanting them. They were sitting in these 2.5-inch containers for the longest time, and some of them are stunted. But one thing about peppers is that they can catch up here in Southern California. So we're hoping they'll catch up like the Manzano has. Some of these other ones, they may just actually stay stunted. Also in this bed, you'll see one of my favorite types of vegetables. This is the gailan. We have a couple varieties in here. And here, this is a suiho, or I think it's probably pronounced siuho. It's probably Cantonese for frying or stir frying. And we have some really good sized stalks this time. And when it comes to harvesting, I harvested one already, and I like to leave a couple nodes on the bottom. And these nodes will grow into more vegetables for us to harvest. So this is great variety for the leaf and stalks. And then here is another variety called Early Jade. And there was a planting where I didn't get around to eating, so they started to bolt. And I discovered that this is a great variety for letting it bolt and getting some of the flower buds. The stalks are nice and tender, and they're great for the asparagus-like quality. One thing I want to show you is there's this phenomenon here. I don't know what it's called. I'm sure some viewer will come along the way and tell us what it's called, but there's something growing out of the leaf. It looks like another leaf with some flower buds. So that's pretty interesting. And when we come down this way, we'll see a thick planting of Roma tomatoes. Normally in this patch here, we would not plant so thickly because I like to keep a buffer, a clear path between our tomato plants that we normally grow here and the edge of the property where we have a creeping fig. That creeping fig acts as a privacy. There's also ivy growing there, and we have a road on the other side, so it's a nice dust filter. But at the same time, the rats like to go up and down that path, and the reason we're taking our tomatoes off the vine and letting them ripen on the counter as opposed to out here is we don't want to attract the rats down this way. So you'll see a lot of open space, buffer space, especially when we look at the retaining wall up there. We try not to make it too dense. It's going to be too comfortable for them. And if they're to come down, then they're going to expose themselves to predators that will get them at nighttime. So Roma tomatoes, and then here is another potato plant that just sprouted, and we'll be harvesting succession potatoes, and it's nice that we haven't need to buy potatoes from the market. Here it's bare. We're in late May, almost June, and there's supposed to be vines of cucumber growing, but this year I kind of concentrated it elsewhere, and I didn't want to spread myself too thin by sowing too many plants and not being able to transplant them. So we're playing catch up. We have a cucumber plant that's ready to go, and we're hoping some direct sown bitter melon will pop out. Maybe this is it right here, and get some bitter melon. On the retaining wall, we have a couple of pumpkins. Those are the Kakai pumpkins. Those are the hull-less pumpkins. So when you get the pumpkin seeds, you don't need to crack them. And we have 2 plants there. And let me show you a plant that we grew for fun. We sowed the seeds in November, and actually it was in this space here. So if you follow that plant, the vine goes from there, and it's actually underneath this bed here, because this bed was recently placed, and I placed it on top, and we put the poly sheet to keep it warm, and it was just to play around to see if it was possible. And lo and behold, it grew through our mild winters, and it made a pumpkin. One thing you may notice is that there's powdery mildew. With the way I grow, I found that powdery mildew is not a big issue. I focus my energy on making sure that the plants are robust. And I find that if I'm taking my time to mix up some solution like milk solution or baking soda, it's taking time away from me spending my time to make other plants. So if I'm always fighting diseases, I'm going to be always doing that. Whereas if I spend my time to make sure other plants are happy, it's not an endless cycle of coming out and taking care of plants. So that's why there's powdery mildew on this one. Is actually at the end of its life, and the pumpkin is already almost ready to be harvested. So not too far away, we have a zucchini plant. And in theory, you know, if you have powdery mildew, it'll spread over and get onto that plant. But with zucchini and summer squash, I like to grow succession plants so that we have plants that are in their prime. And once they get past their prime, we'll remove it, and then another plant will be taking over production. There's a plane go overhead because it's overcast and they fly a little bit lower. So let's stay down here before we go up there and look at the other plants that we have. Here is the early girl tomato. This is a hybrid tomato. This is a slicing tomato, and it's great for fresh eating for sandwiches and burgers. And this one we sowed in late December, along with the Costoluto Genovese. This one we also sowed in late December, and I find that this variety, the Costoluto Genovese, is a great early producer. So we'll sow this one in December, and then we're going to sow this one again in a couple weeks for fall tomatoes. So let me talk about the other one that we do it to, which is the Principe Borgese. And if you want to give it an American accent, it's Principe Borgese. These are the cherry-sized tomatoes, and they have the cooking tomato quality. So we can sun-dry these, or we can make sauces with them. And these are another great early tomato, and they're also a great late tomato. The other type of tomatoes that we have to grow during to time them for our summer months, early summer months, are the beefsteak slicing tomatoes, like the Cherokee Purple. So we have a plant here. This is the first time I'm growing a tomato plant in a grow bag, so I'm not sure what's going on. I'm not too familiar with grow bag growing, and so I'm relatively new to it. So these are all data points for me to figure out why the plant's not happy. I'm thinking maybe it got underwatered. So this plant is the leaves are shriveled, and the tomatoes aren't as big. Over here we have another Cherokee Purple. Let me come back out so you can see it. And this is a strain that was shared to me by a friend, and really grateful because she took the time to ensure that the plant wasn't cross-pollinated. This is the Craig Lahoyer tomato. Craig Lahoyer is famous for growing tomatoes in the East Coast, and this is a Craig Lahoyer tomato. So it's fun to watch and see it grow, and then we're gonna look forward to seeing it ripen. Before I go out, is there anything out here that we can see? We have a succession planting of Roma tomatoes. These are succession plantings of Gailan, so you'll see them in various stages. That line of green, those are bok choy. And one thing you may notice is that when we plant our plants, we have like maybe 6 plants of something. Any more than that, we can't eat, and it just kind of defeats the kitchen garden to table experience if we're going to be storing it in the fridge. So that's what you see, why you see there's so little of it, but we have variety. This is an eggplant, the Black Beauty eggplant, and as I mentioned earlier, we pack everything very tightly because in Southern California our climate is dry and there's a lot of sun. So by packing plants tightly, they're actually providing themselves a nice microclimate. They're shading one another, and when they transpire, there's a cooling effect, so they cool one another off. Over here we have some peppers, and I like to call this the Burpee Pepper Bed because it just works out that we plant most of the plants that the pepper plants that Burpee sends over in here, including this one. This is the cayenne pepper that they sent, I think, in 2020, and so it's been growing here. The other one that survived from 2020 is this jalapeno pepper, and then that one is an Aleppo pepper. That's from the previous video where we did the unboxing. And then this one is not the Burpee garden pepper, but this is an orange bell pepper. One thing about this bed is the skunk likes to come and dig in here for some reason. They have their spots and they just go back to it. That's why we have some wire covering. And then this plant is recovering from being half dug out by the skunk. And I hope that we still will be able to get some peppers from this plant, because the orange bell pepper is one that we grew in the past. We saved the seeds, and it's a very good, thick-walled, big pepper. Let's see other things while we're still out here. We have San Marzano tomatoes, and you'll notice we use a lot of these garden poles. These are from Daiso. They're very economical. They're a good way to and cheap way to stake tomato plants. So that's what we have in there. And the other thing that we do is we do proactive gardening, and that means that we planned spaces for the different conditions in the growing year. So with summer coming up, and this being Southern California, there's going to be a lot of sunlight, a lot of heat, and so we have some sunflowers planted in front of our tomatoes as a way to create shade. We also have this is a loofah plant, and we're hoping that it will grow faster so that we can have it grow on some paneling, and then we'll have it angled and it'll create shade for this area, which I'm sure the chickens and the ducks will love once it cools off. I'm kind of heading away from our garden there, so I'm gonna start making my way back. But before I do, here's another green stalk, and here are some of the Burpee garden plants. These are the peppers from heaven, and there's a red, yellow, and orange, and I have it planted on the top tier in hopes that it will trail down, because it's supposed to be a trailing variety. And then once it trails down, hopefully the strawberries will like it, because in the summer I'm sure the strawberries will like some of that transpiration and some shading effect from these pepper plants. So hoping that grow a little bit faster. Here's a strawberry. We have a few varieties in here. I'm not going to get into it just for the sake of time. The other thing that's over here, just real quick, we have a row of sweet corn, and that's something that I want to grow more of this year, the market hybrid sweet corn. In the past, we mostly grew the hybrid, the heirloom varieties. So those are great, but I miss the market ones. I haven't bought a market corn in a few years, so I want to get some of that corn back into our kitchen. So let me take you up here, or before I do, let me show you our vertical planter. Because of the peach tree, there's not a lot of direct sunlight, and herbs can grow in partial shade, filtered light. So we have some herbs in here, including mojito. This is the authentic mint for the cocktail, and the mojito is one of my favorite cocktails to have. We just direct sowed some basil, so we had a couple of basil plants in here. There was a Thai basil and an Italian basil. And up here we have some salad greens that we just sowed. This is the butter crunch. This is a Vietnamese coriander, and there's mint, and then there's fish mint here, and we have some Moroccan mint. This is the mint that the Moroccans use for the Moroccan tea. And we have some other mints. This is a variegated mint. This is just grown for fun. And if you're wondering about all these straggly plants, these are cover crop. They're the buckwheat. So anywhere where we have exposed dirt, that's not really good for us here in Southern California. We try to grow a cover crop or find some type of mulch to lay down as quick as possible. It preserves the microorganism and life that is in the soil, and that's what we rely on for all the energy that our plants get. So yeah, let's start heading up there. Oh, before I do, I almost forgot. We have some epazote, and this is actually bolting now. We have some other plants elsewhere that are nice and lush, and they grow for quite some time before they start bolting. This is probably not happy that it's here. It actually probably needs direct sunlight. That's probably why it's bolting. So we have epazote, and that's one ingredient in green pozole, and that's one of my favorite dishes to make. And so we grow the Kakai Pumpkin because pumpkin seeds are in green pozole. And then the other thing that we put in the green pozole are the hatch peppers. So the hatch pepper is an Anaheim type of pepper that they grow in the Hatch Valley of New Mexico. And growing chilies has become a big industry for New Mexico. They have a whole university system devoted to the research, and the peppers grow in a very they grow happily in that climate over there. So here is a New Mexico 64L pepper. So this is an Anaheim variety that they developed. It gets really big. This one is actually supposed to be twice as wide and probably a little bit longer. The soil here is pretty new, so that's probably why we're not seeing large peppers. I think next year it'll be amazing soil. And I find that soil, when you build soil here in Southern California, it takes about 3 years to get going. And once it does, and you're growing for large harvests, things that produce large fruit, that's when it makes the really big fruits for you. So here's another one. So they're great for green pozole. One ingredient that we didn't grow this year is tomatillos. And so we'll need to pick up some tomatillos from the market to make our green pozole with. Red onions. We have a bunch of red onions. Let me stick my hand in there for some scale. I find that the red onions grow they're really easy to grow as opposed to the yellow and the white onions. So we have a lot of those, and I've been eating them more. And then here is another Kakai Pumpkin. And this is where we grew them last year and did really well. So we're doing it again. And you may notice that the plant is bushy. I was talking to some folks online, and I discovered that the Kakai Pumpkin, there it is. I discovered that depending on your climate, if you're in a warm climate, they grow more bushy. If you're in a colder climate, they vine. And the reason is because once in the warmer climate, they get to the fruiting stage much more quickly. They get the pumpkin gets pollinated, and then it stops growing. Whereas in the cooler climates, the vine will continue to grow before the pumpkin produces. What are we looking at over here? We have more herbs. So we have some Thai basil, and then here we have some thyme and some Italian basil. This is a Scotch bonnet. This is a red one. And that reminds me, we also have peppers up here. This is a Serrano pepper that's overwintered. And some of them are dry because we just, we can't eat so many peppers. I can't eat it quick enough. So, whoops. Here's where to go. There's a pepper right there. Serrano pepper. And then somewhere in here is a yellow Scotch bonnet. And it's right here. It's being shaded out by the grape now. And as far as grapes, we're starting to get some grapes. This grape plant has been moved at least a couple times because our backyard changed. When we got rid of the patio, it was planted near there, so we had to plant it somewhere else. And it was planted quickly and temporarily, and now we've planted it here. So we'll see how it grows. We'll see if we get some good-sized grapes. I'm just trying to see what else is growing here. This is a dark star tomato. This is one of the plants that Burpee sent us, and we're just gonna plant it here and see what happens. Since summer's coming around, I think it's gonna be really hot, and by the time it gets big, it'll be too hot for it. So I think here it's kind of shaded, and I'm hoping that will help it out, as opposed to planting it in the open here like this. It probably won't be too happy. The other thing we have is eggplants, and like I mentioned in the Burpee unboxing, These are the Asian slender eggplants, and I'm hoping to be able to grow. Actually, they're easy to grow, but I'm hoping to be able to eat them more and find them into more kitchen dishes. And here we have some onions that, like I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I just sow them whenever, so we have some onions. And then this is ginger. And if you're wondering about this powder, this is gypsum. I just sprinkled some gypsum the other day in this bed here. When it comes to ginger, we can grow them here, and I think it just needs more humidity. So I'm trying to plant them in a more humid environment. We got one ginger rhizome in the greenhouse, and hopefully it will sprout and we'll get ginger from there. So I think that's pretty much it. These are more peppers. We got some Jamaican yellows, jalapenos, another variety of jalapenos, and then these here are scallions, and scallions is something that I love to use in the kitchen, so we have a lot of them growing. And if you're wondering what this is a peach. The variety is mid-pride. It's a very nice yellow peach, very productive here in Southern California. And then next to it is Satsuma Mandarin tree. So that's what we have growing here. Most of our other growing spaces in the front yard. We have some in the side yard. So we'll do an update and tour of that in a future video. And we have Valencia juicing oranges, and this tree is finally producing for us after a few years, so I'm looking forward to harvesting that. Yeah, so I probably can spend out all day here talking about plants because I really like them, but I think it's time to sign off, and we'll see you in a future update. And thanks for coming out and checking out and seeing what we're doing and what we're growing. See you in the next video.